arrested. I was arrested once. I was handcuffed. I was fingerprinted. I was photographed. I was detained. I was humiliated, put behind bars in a cell. It was horrible. It was devastating, but it was just for a moment. I was humiliated in front of my friends, in front of my colleagues, in front of brothers. I was humiliated in front of my wife, handcuffed. Can you believe it? And even though I was arrested, that doesn't make me like Jesus, even though he was arrested, just like I was. Maybe a different form, maybe for a different reason. But I know what it feels like to be arrested. Let's recall that night that he was arrested. He had this dinner, this supper with his friends that was to them just another supper, but to him, he knew that it was completely different. He knew that something was happening that had never happened before. Something was going on that had never gone on before. And there was a gravity to him because he knew that he was going to be arrested. And he knew that beyond the arrest, there was going to be more. Yeah. As a matter of fact, after supper that night, the distress of that moment in that supper, and even though the revelation and the introduction of something they didn't even realize or know, he said, let's go for a hike. And they went through a hike out of the city, through the walls, through the gates, down into the valley called the Kidron Valley, and across that valley into the foot of the Mount of Olives, or Mount Olivet, just across the valley. And there was this expansive olive grove. And they go into this olive grove that was called the Gethsemane Garden. And in that Gethsemane Garden, Jesus was absolutely distressed in that moment. And he asked his friends, can you just hang with me 1 hour here? Will you just hang with me 1 hour? And he went a little bit beyond them, and it was such a distress. The Bible says that in that moment, in that night, he sweated, as it were, great drops of blood. It's horrible for him. He came back to find his friends not waiting with him, not giving him just the 1 hour, but sleeping in the garden. And he asked them again, please stay with me 1 hour. And again, they went to sleep on him. Not the greatest of nights. And then, in the middle of that distressing prayer time, there came a company of soldiers, of officers, and religious leaders into the grove. They found out where he was, and they came into the grove, and one of his closest followers reached up and kissed him on the cheek to say, this is the one. And he was arrested. After his sense of abandonment, after his sense of betrayal, he went to jail. He faced an all-night trial that we'll talk about later. But his friends, they scattered. They didn't even stay with him in that moment. They were gone. He was arrested for subversion. Can you imagine? For subversion. For coming under the system to uproot it, which is what he was there for. But he was there for that, for us. He was about to face a torture. He was about to face a public humiliation. He was about to face the scourge of lies against him. And that's what was next for Jesus. But was his mission stopped just because of the arrest? Or was it launched? Was he vanquished, or was he set up for success in that? Was he in the hands of man, or was he in the hands of God? That's what we're going to find out as we go through this week. Stay with me. This is Holy Week, the week of passion, the week of suffering, the week of his arrest.